you, Right Club audience, are going to profess your readiness, is it?
No!
I thought. Right Club audience, are you ready?
No!
And they are yours, Ms. Turner. 3, 2, 1, and go.
Today, I meditate on the notion of being an ice queen. For the first 30 years, I have gone about the romantic game in backward and unwinning ways. Now in my mid-30s, I find myself in the position of dating seriously for the first time and having to explain myself and my lack of experience to those men, and it's rather hard to do. Picture it. First date, second date, you're getting to know a person, swapping stories. You hear about vitriolic exes, passionate kisses over bottles of wine and turkey, or how they first learned they'd been dumped on Facebook. But I have nothing to share. Now, thanks to 2 years of internet dating in Atlanta, I have a handful of anecdotes, particularly all of the first dates I've been on, even all of the crazy ways men have shown up for dates. Showed up late, showed up drunk, showed up late and drunk, showed up with friends, showed up gay, showed up wearing eyeliner. I think he may have fallen in the previous category. Didn't show up at all. But the discerning man, one who's really interested, really starts to ask questions about relationships. And that's when I get the feeling a little like I'm having, well, now. I tried to explain about how I gained a lot of weight in my 20s, a thyroid problem, and how I lived in a college town for years where I was getting older and older, but the vast majority of the population stayed 18 to 22. They sit there and nod quietly, and then I start to get a bit fidgety and I over-explain. So 5 years went by and I didn't even kiss anyone, which generally leads to a raised eyebrow and more questions. And then if he's slick enough, and I feel a bit like being vulnerable enough, or maybe I've had enough wine, the big whammy. Really? Really? I can't tell you why it took me so long. There were opportunities here and there. But I never wanted my first time to happen drunk on a couch. That was all. And I didn't find anyone who wanted to date longer than 3 weeks if sex wasn't involved. 3 weeks. Didn't sound like very much. Whether that makes me an ice queen or a hopeless romantic, I'll leave to you. Maybe an ice queen and a hopeless romantic are closer than we know. So speaking of that time in my 20s, which I now call my latency period, I'd like to tell you a story. My friend Erica, her beau Jeffrey, and I were wont to gallivant around in that college town a lot in those days. On one extremely cold January night, we had just wrapped up eating a delicious dinner of lemon cream pasta at Zeppelin's, and we were headed across the parking lot to Walgreens to buy the new hair dye product, Feria, which had just hit the market. Erica was anxious to try it out on my hair, and being her best friend, I was a willing guinea pig. As we were walking, we were laughing about how full our bellies were, and I had one of those inexplicable moments that happen from time to time. If you've never experienced one, I can hardly explain the feeling. But I have, many times. 1 minute you are one place, the next you are in another. And generally, there is pain involved. This has happened to me so many times that the subtitle of my life could probably be Falling Down in the Most Public Ways. I fell. Only Erica and Jeffrey were there to be the witness, but I cannot say that I was there because I'm quite convinced that my soul left my body in this moment. All I can remember is laughter, full belly, and then the white-hot pain in the back of my head, and yes, I quite literally saw stars. No Tweety birds, but definitely stars. Tears poured from my eyes, not the emotional kind of tears. This was an immediate physical maybe chemical reaction that came from somewhere deep, and the tears froze on my clothes like glitter. Before that night, I have to confess, I sort of thought that black ice was a myth. One of those things that you tell teenagers so they'll drive carefully at night. Like you tell younger kids that granddaddy longlegs are the most poisonous spiders in the world, but their mouths aren't big enough to bite you, so they won't go around pulling their legs off them for fear that they'll get a hold of the one with the biggest mouth. Falling was how I learned that black ice was in fact real. And that feeling, the feeling of having the ground fall out from underneath you, despite having been careful, is why I spent so many years as an ice queen. I can admit that now. It wasn't really about weight gain or any of the other party lines that I had come up with. I got very good at feigned indifference. And isn't that what describes an ice queen? Feigned indifference? Now when I'm dating someone new, Erica checks in with me. She wants to know if I'm leaning in. When she started using this euphemism, I told her that I was afraid of leaning in. Leaning in meant that I could fall over. These days, I'm not afraid of that metaphorical fall. It is in fact the fall that I want. I'm hoping that, like black ice, true love for me is not a myth. The Ice Queen thaws.